Jordan, I want to look back quickly before we move on from the transfer portal talk to this time last year, right? When Clemson was having trouble landing offensive linemen, we basically missed out on every lineman outside of one that came to our big recruiting event in the summer. They all ended up committing elsewhere. And we were trying to get a couple offensive linemen from the portal. We missed out on a few offensive linemen that we were recruiting, right? Most of them never even got on campus. So, in your opinion, what has changed for Clemson as far as recruiting the transfer portal, and why does it look so much different this cycle? Is it their aggression in the NIL space where, now they're giving the same perks that you get for donating to IPTAY when you donate to the 110 Society? Is it Dabo Sweeney being more aggressive in the transfer portal? Is it just we got more holes to fill and we can't do it with high school recruiting right now? In your opinion, what has changed the most about Clemson's approach to the portal from just one short season ago?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's a two-pronged thing. I think ultimately, first of all, Clemson's approach has changed, I think, considerably from last year. They've casted a much wider net than they had in the previous cycle. Clemson, last year Clemson locked in on a few guys and really tried to get them to and really zeroed in on them, but didn't really leave any room for backfilling or any backup options. They kind of like how they do in recruiting. Like they don't offer a ton of kids in out of the high school ranks. And so sometimes, if you don't get your guy, kind of leaves you in a situation where you're having to pull the trigger on some prospects that you weren't really necessarily the highest on. And so I think that approach changed this cycle. They were able to, like I said, they were able to cast a wider net. They were more proactive in putting out feelers and just, gauging interest. I think that was one thing that they did a lot better. And they were more, I think messaging was a big part of that. They were much more receptive, just to people, guys reaching out to other players. And I think that went a long way. And then the second thing is that I think Clemson they've got their money together. That was one thing that was very apparent last cycle was they were not in the position to meet the monetary demands that some of these transfer portal guys were asking for, because they hadn't really put together, they were not well organized as far as that was concerned. And it's a lot different this year. And I think also the looming promise of revenue sharing certainly helped Clemson as far as their recruiting efforts in the portal as well. So I think all of that combined, I think Clemson was just in a much better position, because I feel like Dabo made his decision that he was going to dip into the portal pretty early on into the season.
Right.
I think at the latest, probably the Louisville game.
I think it was.
That's not me. That I don't know exactly, but that's just my feel. It felt like he was sowing the seeds in order to be able to go and get guys if he needed to pretty early this time around.
Absolutely, and it's I think a lot of what you said makes sense, and Dabo's obviously, and Clemson as a whole has changed their approach to the portal and being a lot more aggressive. I think the NIL thing cannot be understated, and Clemson, as you say, having their money together this go around, and Graham Neff making that decision to give the same point system perks to donating to the 110 Society as you get to donating to IPTAY. I think that was super important, and I think that increased, and there was probably an influx of money that came into the 110 Society because of that move. So credit to Graham Neff and the leadership at Clemson for making that very key decision. And I think the revenue sharing is obviously Clemson's very forward-facing in this. Dabo's been talking about this for over a year now, and how excited he is about rev sharing, and that they can finally use funds that they've always had to keep and retain and get new players, right? And use that as a roster management tool. And I think Clemson as far as the reports we've heard, they're going to use the vast majority of that $20+ million, whatever it ends up being, for football. And then a small amount will obviously be divvied up over the other sports, but football is going to get probably 90% of that money. So pretty awesome from Clemson. I think it's been a breath of fresh air for Clemson to, kind of report on their signings of their roster and being a lot more public when it comes to their dealings in NIL. I think that was a piece that Clemson was missing a lot when it came to, just the NIL space and how college football has evolved and changed. And they needed a lot of that. And I like the new approach that Clemson is doing. They're not out here pulling a Colorado or a Florida State or anything like that. They're just doing what we've been saying on the show for a long time. All they needed to do was pull a couple key players out to fill voids in the roster. And so far this cycle, that's what they've done at the wide receiver position to get another body there, because you lost a couple via the transfer portal. The defensive end position probably should have done it last year, but hey, better late than never. They got it done this year. And then obviously a point of need at linebacker.